Here, let me play it for you. Lost in my mind, wondering if you will ever find me. Still, I want to run and hide so that you won't see the fear inside me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of season 3. Got another special guest for y'all today, Billy McPherson. Introduce yourself. Let the world know who you are.
Hi, I'm Billy List, which we do stuff with maps in case you're wondering what that is. Working building a network of weather stations here in Oklahoma, which is where I am. And from there, just ended up doing a lot of computer programming of weather type software that we used. Um, and then going into later mapping of climate and helping to build some specialty applications. I also did a little bit of teaching in the what is our Department of Geography and Environmental Sustainability, and taught some introductory computer mapping courses, which was a lot of fun for me because it involved a lot of imagery, satellite imagery, um, and I got to teach some color theory to these young impressionable minds, which is really a lot of fun when you start delving into the nature of color, what it is, what our eyes are actually seeing, which is not necessarily the same thing.
Let everyone know that you are a musician too. And
I am a musician. I'm 63, I think. That sounds right. And I've been playing piano since I was 5. Um, I was at my grandparents' house, and my grandmother had she had this nice upright piano, which is pretty good, and a Hammond A100, which, if you don't know what the Hammond A100 is, it's basically a home console version of the Hammond B3. And so she would play this, and it was just magnificent listening to her play. And one day when we were in town and my aunt was there, I was just sitting at the piano, kind of hitting on things, blah, blah, blah. And she came over and she just taught me a couple of simple songs. And from that point on, I was hooked. Later, I got into band, um, did that in the fourth grade. We were very fortunate in the way that things timed out for me, since I got to start actually in the summer before fourth grade. Um, my grandfather bought me a trumpet for me to play, and he also gave me his cornet that he had gotten in the army because he was in the army in World War II, and he was in requisitions. So somehow he came across this cornet, which is just magnificent. And I'm sitting here looking at it right now. I need to get that sucker fixed so I can maybe play it again. So by sixth grade, though, the band director decided I really wasn't doing all that great on trumpet. Something about the way that my throat was closing up didn't really make it sound all that good. He suggested I switch to French horn, and I thought, well, that's cool. So I switched over to that and I played that for a few years. And I actually have a French horn sitting over here, which I hardly ever play, but I really need to start playing again. I want to start playing that thing again. And I should mention also that I write music a lot. I'm into melody. Melody is the thing in my head, and then the chords that go with those melodies. And that's how I think. All the time I'm thinking of music.
a lot of I'm not thinking of melody, I'm thinking of lyrics, but my brain will replay lyrics in my head all the time. And then ADHD brain, I can't get the get it to stop, and I'll be sitting there singing songs in my head a lot. And sometimes it's actually a comfort. Like when I'm don't have my headphones or I'm like in class or something, I just play a song in my head. It gets worse when it's time to lay down and I have to go to bed, and then the songs are just playing in my head and I can't stop singing them, so my brain's not relaxing enough for me to actually close my eyes. But I'll do that with lyric writing too. When I have an idea and I'll just like play around with it in my mind, then I'm playing around with it in my mind for like the rest of the day, and it's hard to stop. But the easiest thing I could do to get it to stop is to write it down or record it, and then at least I know that that part's done. But then I'm still working and building the rest of the song in my head. It's a little different with melody. I don't have the thing where I could play a melody in my head. I just play the lyrics.
I don't know when this was exactly, like a couple of years ago on Twitter. This was just the most amazing thing. Someone was totally baffled by the fact that someone they knew thought in terms of language. When they would think, they would be thinking in the words, whereas he was abstract in his thinking. He didn't think in words. He didn't have that inner dialogue going on. It was sound and shape and pictures and all sorts of things, not the words that went with them. And I thought, yeah, that's how I am too. And that this thread went on forever of people that were just surprised that whichever side they were on, that the other side even existed.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this to my wife, and I said, "This is so weird. People are thinking in words and everything." And she goes, "Yeah, that's how I think. Why? How do you think?" I go, "What?" And it's like, I didn't even know that she and I literally thought differently.
It blew my mind too when I learned that aphantasia is what I had, where I can't see images and
Yes,
in my head.
a lot of people are like that. I don't have that problem, but I realize it, and I've been thinking about this a lot more in terms of the ADHD. And one of the things I think I finally convinced my wife of is that I am dish blind. When I go to load the dishwasher, there are certain places where I can look right at that place on the counter. And if there's a dish there, I will not see it. Now, I know she can't even begin to understand how that can be possible, but it's true. And so she's finally getting to where she puts the dishes in another location where I do see them. And as I'm thinking of this, I'm also thinking of it in terms of how other people are. And, you know, it may be that you don't understand how it is they can't understand what you do,
Yeah.
how you think. How can you not feel this? How can you not know this? How can you not see this? And yet they don't, because their brain doesn't work the same way. And there are normal ways, what we call normal, that are the way most people might think in certain situations. And then there are those of us who don't think that way. And so we don't exactly fit in. And in
Yeah.
that case, we're abnormal outside the normal, but at the same time, it's only abnormal because their way became the dominant way instead of ours.
Yeah.
And so I try to remember this when I'm talking with people or when I see people, especially on threads where you and I are very active. I see it, people that have very different struggles than the ones I have. So, you know,
It
I try to be a little bit more graceful in those situations.
it definitely is a spectrum. Um, I have a really bad problem with someone who thinks in words and I can't think in pictures. I can't read fiction books that don't have pictures.
Wow, that lends itself to the comic books, obviously.
And that's why comic books were like the one way I was able to read and express literature because I couldn't picture the image in my head that they're describing. Instead, my mind just kind of passes it over, and people thought I was illiterate for a while. But it's not that. It's just that I don't that aphantasia where I can't create the image in my head to see it. Um, and in high school and middle school, when they're making us have to read books and stuff, I had such a struggle with it. Like I had to try to find some sort of movie, even Cliff Notes. I'd be sitting there. I can memorize words and memorize things, but I'm not really in taking it like how you're supposed to read a fiction book as a story. When I learned how to learn, it was through reading something, highlighting what I need to memorize, and then rewriting it in my own words. And that was the only way I was able to actually like learn. But it took me till like I was like 26. I had already done like 4 years of college where I was failing and all this stuff because I did not know how to learn yet because of ADD. I didn't know the process that I needed to take to memorize and learn things.
Sort of reminds me, one of the books I remember we had to read in elementary school was A Wrinkle in Time. And yeah, you need an imagination that can handle that book, or else it just won't make any sense to you. I'm hoping you didn't have to do that one.
No, I had to do To Kill a Mockingbird. I had to do a few different books, and there was like it was like my junior year of high school that they were like, you pick the book. So I literally, and it had to be a fiction book, and I literally went out to the library and like looked through so many books, and I found one that actually worked with me. It was basically all out. The whole book was written in instant messages, and so all the dialogue was. It was basically like reading a theater play, but in a book. And that's when I first learned that dialogue and stuff is something I connect with because they're not painting a picture, they're expressing the feelings and the words, and I'm able to understand it better than someone doing descriptive writing that is in a lot of fiction books. Where this one was like not really description, it was just dialogue. And that was actually my first time till like the future that I was able to reconceptualize like, oh, this is actually like reading a play because I could read plays and read scripts because it's more about the words and the emotion and the dialogue rather than the descriptive writing. Film scripts are a little different, but plays specifically, it's all dialogue. And I'm able to
Yeah.
actually process all of that in a different way. And same with comic books. We get our little description at the top, we get the
Hmm.
picture, and then it's all dialogue.
Yep.
Um, and that's why like comic books were like one of the one things that made me feel like I am not illiterate. And really connected with them more. Another thing is poetry. I was poetry like R.L. Stein and Edgar Allan Poe and stuff. Using the words to communicate the deeper meaning is what I really connected with.
I think Edgar Allan Poe would have been a comic book writer if he
Yeah.
lived in this modern day. Which, by the way, I think that's how we first connected was over
Comic
some
books.
comic book post. I think that you there was something else even before that, and I
Yeah.
can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something comic book related, and I responded, and then we got, going back and forth about it.
You're the
And
only one who ever commented on my comic books post.
yeah, I try and catch people, and I have found threads to be a great place to just find people with common interests and even non-common interests.
What brought you to meteorology? Were you a kid that looked at the stars and dreamed in the stars?
When I was in the fourth grade, it was Christmas time, and I got a telescope, and it was so cool. Now, it wasn't quite strong enough to see Saturn very well, but I could see Jupiter. I could see the Great Red Spot. I could see the moons. And the fascinating thing about it to me was, like one night it'd be Jupiter in the middle, and then moons would be like this, and then the next night it was like this. I'm going, wow, one of those moons swapped sides. So it basically had an orbital period of like 2 days. And I thought, that's incredible. That moon just goes around there that fast, and I can see it from my telescope. That was amazing. My dad was a PhD chemist. His family all comes from Central Texas, and none of them really had that higher education. Some of his uncles had some degrees from college, but no one had really gone that far. He went to Texas A&M University. I was born probably about the time that he was starting into graduate school. I'll tell you one thing. I spent the first 4 years of my life there in College Station because of the change of location so early in my life. I know that the memories that I have of that place had to happen when I was 3 or 4 years old, which is really kind of cool because a lot of people can't remember things from when they were 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
I happen to have that particular location because of that. So, anyway, he got his degree, his PhD in chemistry, and then we moved up to Duncan, Oklahoma. He did geochemistry his whole life. And through that time, he got me interested in science. Now, oddly enough, chemistry I really didn't get into very much. But he bought me the telescope. He and mom bought me that. They bought me a microscope at one point. Bought one of those. This was great. One of those 101 electronic experiment kits with the little springs, and you'd hook up the wires, and you could do all these different experiments with it. That was a lot of fun. I had very high aptitude in science and math. Of the three kids, that's where I excelled. My brother excelled in things physical, pretty good football player. In college, he did some pole vaulting. Well, in high school, he did some pole vaulting too.
Which is all about physics.
Yeah, not the way you would think about it, though, but in a more
Yeah.
practical manner. Sadly, he got multiple sclerosis
Oh.
sometime later, and he actually died back in 1999. So he's been gone quite a while now. Of the two of us, he's the one who got all the looks and all the women. We were 2 years apart. So we did all sorts of stuff together. We had many of the same friends, which was nice. He got every bit of my mother's extrovert gene that I did not. Everything, all the guys, all the girls were friends of his. When uh, I graduated high school in 1980, and he was 3 years behind that. And we didn't have the internet yet.
Yeah.
We barely had computers. He, being the person that he was constantly calling people, calling all our friends. He would just call them up and then they'd talk. And so he was my source of information on what happened to all of our friends after we graduated. After he died, until Facebook came along, I didn't know anything about anybody.
One of my older brothers is the extrovert of the family. He never had a problem calling people and talking to people.
Yeah.
Where that's a big problem with me too. Uh, I'm a very introverted person. Like when I did
Yeah, so
my
am I.
Myers-Briggs test, I was 95% introverted.
I'm very introverted. I am, the problem with sensory overload if I'm too long with too many people. Like my wife and I went out with some friends of ours a couple of weeks ago, and even with just the two of them, even though they live out of town, so we don't see them all that often, and we're having a great time, but there comes a certain point where uh, my brain just starts to shut down,
Yeah.
and it wants to flee. It's take me away from here. It was also very busy that night in the restaurant, very noisy. And I know I'm in there a lot for lunches on weekday afternoons, so I kind of get to know the wait staff. And I was talking to some of them later, and they said, yeah, it was just slammed that night. It was crazy loud. And even though we were in a corner, which was great because we were away from all those other people,
Yeah.
but it still got to be a bit of an overload.
Yeah, I've recently talked about this with my psychiatrist, and my psychiatrist said that you're showing signs of um petite autism. I forget which type it is, but the sensory overload makes me want to run and escape a lot. I don't do good in crowds. I don't do good on crowded buses. I don't I've learned how to just close myself off with music by putting loud music in my headphones and stuff, just so like I'm like away from that, and curl into a ball in the corner and just like avoid all the sensory overload. But
It's not exactly that with me. I'm not sure what it is, but it's kind of that way. But yeah, I understand that with some people. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched Welcome to Wrexham about the Wrexham Football Club.
yeah, Ryan Reynolds
Yeah.
and oh, I forget
Um,
his name.
yeah, from It's Always Sunny in
Yeah.
Philadelphia. Yeah. Um, yeah, and so there's the one um, girl who was, helping with the team, and finally, she would go to the game and she would wear headphones so that she could block that out, so that she could be there, be in the moment, and be able to handle it. I don't fully understand that, but I get it. And I get that that's a way for her to handle that. We all have these coping mechanisms. And so, I look at, what are my coping mechanisms? And mine are to run away in a lot of situations. You
Yeah.
know, how I figured out I was ADHD. Uh, I'm sitting in my media room in my house one night, and I'm watching television. I'm 45 years old, so I'm well into life.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the TV station that would re-show that day's episode of Oprah, because I never watch Oprah, but it was on, and for some reason I left it on, and that night was about ADHD. And they were talking with some doctors and with some people who had it, and I'm sitting there listening to this, thinking they are basically painting my life story up there on a canvas. And I just said, I gotta check this out. So I go to my doctor, and he's pretty good about these things. And so he gives me the screener. And because he's not one of these people that just prescribe medicine, he goes, I can see that this looks very, very much like it. So
Yeah.
he sent me to somebody to get evaluated. And since adult ADHD wasn't really,
Researched or
well, no, it's well known and everything, but in this part of the country, there was just nobody who really understood it, who could evaluate it. So he actually sent me to a child psychologist. And she'd worked with some other adults. So she knew how to diagnose adult ADHD, but it was funny sitting there having these sessions with her and all these tiny little chairs sitting around everywhere. I thought, I'm really glad she has a couple of like grown-up couches, probably for the parents to sit on while the kids are doing some of this stuff. But yeah, and she diagnosed me. And I'm thinking, wow, I know what this is now. And so I tell my parents. I was kind of worried about telling them because, after my brother had died from um, having the MS, and I thought they're just going to think this is something scary, and I don't know how I'm going to quickly tell them that this is not the same kind of thing. So I tell them, and my mom just goes, "Oh yeah, your brother had that." I'm going, "What?" She goes, "Oh yeah, he was diagnosed with that." I go, "Why has no one ever in my life told me this?"
yeah.
I don't know. But now looking at it and recognizing it, and knowing the genetic nature of it, I can trace this back to my grandfather easily.
Yeah.
I can see it in his life, um, and then in many other family members. So, and in my poor
Yes.
niece, she's got it. But
I have it on both sides of my family.
oh, do you? Lucky you. There was no escaping it then.
Yeah, I mean they now that I have been diagnosed and I've gone through some stuff, took psychology classes and neuroscience classes and learned a lot about it. I'm able to tell them more, and both of them are like, yeah, we probably have ADHD, but they have never been diagnosed with it, so they've never been helped with it. They just have dealt with it their entire life.
Right.
Um,
I had to. And so, it was fun for me to do. And I'm sure that no one else would think that this was fun at all. I started looking at some research papers on it. And since I had a science
yeah,
background and everything, I could read the statistics and everything that was in these things. And I can't remember the scientist, but he was talking about the genetic nature of it and presenting the different statistics and how it related to other things like I'm not sure what they call it now. Back then it was slow cognitive tempo, SCT, but it's got a different name now,
yeah,
which I can't think of it. And he was also relating it to some other conditions, many of them which are comorbid. It has a lot of similar symptoms to ADHD, but it is not the mind distraction quite as much, which is what I'm having right now because I'm thinking of something else.
yeah. I mean, me too, man. Sorry, I cut you off. It's two ADD people in
Yeah,
a
I
call
know, I
like
know, I
this.
know. Yeah, and it's weird to live with it. And I don't know why, but as I got on Threads, I swear half of the musicians in the music circle are ADHD. There are so many ADHD musicians.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's fun, I know.
That's actually part of adult ADHD.
Yes.
Because when you're a kid, sitting down and trying to learn an instrument, having ADHD, your mind just like you're not. It's like I'd rather play a video game, do this, that, do all this stuff. My ADHD got worse because of prefrontal cortex injuries, where I literally damaged because of concussions. It just made my ADHD way more worse. And I literally switched from being the math science person to being the poet writer, and then math doesn't really make sense to me anymore. And science, I like have a hard time with science, but I'm really good with words and all this stuff. But I literally had to switch. Like I in fourth grade, I actually placed in the top 5% in America for you know they do the testing. It was called CSAP in Colorado, whatever CSAP stands for, but basically like ACT for elementary school students. And that's when they were like, "You're gifted and talented," and they put me in a program that was for the gifted and talented. I didn't really know I was in like a special needs program, but my elementary school knew this before even I was diagnosed. They put me in a program because I was just so good with numbers and so good with science. But because I was a college athlete, played all these sports and stuff, I kept getting concussions to my prefrontal cortex, which kept damaging it and giving me a less amount of dopamine and like killing all of my acetylcholine inhibitors that I somehow I had a switch in my brain, and now I'm horrible with numbers, I'm horrible with science and math, but I'm really good with words, poetry, and all these other things, which was what I was really bad with when I was a kid. Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah, I was a bad music student. I should have been a whole lot better. I could have been fantastic even if I had that ability to really get into it. I could tell my piano teacher was frustrated with me all those years.
I guess that's what I was getting at is that My adult ADHD made me better at art, and I was able to pick up an instrument and learn music and learn all these different writing forms and learn all this artistic stuff that I was not I could not sit down and do any of that and learn music or art or draw or anything like that when I was a kid. But my ADHD switched, and they're saying that it's probably because of the concussions.
Well, I was always great with numbers and science, and yeah, funny thing was during the ADHD evaluation, the therapist gave me an IQ test. And when she was done, she wrote me a letter that would have let me get into Mensa. And of course, I set it aside, lost it, and didn't ever do anything with it. Not that I thought about it later, I would have even wanted to do, because that's just one more thing that really didn't interest me. For all the people out there who are watching this right now who have ADHD, I regret to inform you it gets worse as you get older. There are things now, like I just say, I was good with numbers, I was good with most science, but now I cannot even care about them. Map making, I was pretty good at that, but if I had to try and do geographic information science stuff now, I don't know that I could do it because it just isn't interesting enough in my brain for me to be able to do. I mean, I can't do it. It's not that I just don't want to, and if I try to sit down and force myself to do it, I don't think I could.
Yeah.
It's that much of a pushback in my brain. One of the worst things that ever happened to me was a test one time that I was taking. It was satellite climatology. And I was really good at that course, at all of it. And I'm sitting in a test, and right in the middle of the test, my brain shuts down. Says, "Nope, I don't want to think anymore. Go think about something else." And I'm going, "I need to take this test. You need to work with me here, brain, please." I don't know how I got through the test. Yeah, my grades were not the best, and it was, I'd like to say it was not for lack of trying, but it literally was from lack of trying.
Yeah.
I just, there was only one course I ever took that I really tried hard in that I didn't do well. That was botany. And I still have no idea to this day why I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
If there was a course that I tried to do, I could do well. That's just, I was fortunate that way.
I feel that like when I was in after I got diagnosed, I was like 26, and I was able to get Medicaid that paid for my ADD medication. I was able to go back to college, and I was taking all the classes I was passionate about. All the classes, I was taking music classes and writing classes and all the classes that I wanted to take. Then I got to my last 2 years of college where I had to take the gen ed classes. And I had to, and there was like something where I couldn't get into all these classes, and then I had to take a business class. I went to a community college before that. I actually had a 4.0, so I took all of music classes, art classes, writing classes, and I took liberal mathematics, where it was like our first assignment was write a poem using math words. I was like, oh, this right up my alley. Um, then when I went to the university, I was still doing the same thing where I was only taking classes that I was passionate about. Then I had to take these different classes. I forget which one the business class was. It was the first time I got a D. Um, and because I ended up graduating with a 3.7 from the university because of the classes I was taking and all the stuff that I was passionate about through the class. But the one class, that business class, I got a D. Broke my 4.0. And that's what failed my grade because
Mhm.
I just couldn't, I wasn't interested in it. And
Yeah.
it wasn't giving me, because the a big thing that a lot of people don't know about ADHD is the dopamine receptors and stuff. A part of that is our reward sensation. And when we're completing something, we get that reward sensation. but you have to be wanting to do it. Where when it comes down to like how you're saying with your test and
Hmm.
with that one, like I didn't want to do it, so there was no reward sensation of even trying. So my brain shut down and I did like it was something to do with uh like the whole thing was had to do something with mortgage and real estate and a bunch of just business stuff that I was
I decided that halfway through my undergrad degree, which was physics. So I started taking a lot of meteorology courses, to kind of be ready for when I got into grad school. And I was also taking a ton of math courses. I got to the end of the degree, and it's just a weird way that our stuff works here on how dual degrees in that day was. But I basically had 3 hours of physics to finish or 6 hours of math, which is kind of surprising. And there was one time I went and talked to my advisor, and we were going over the requirements for the degree. And she goes, "You're taking too much science and math. Um, you need to go take like a home economics course or something to fulfill this other requirement." I was like, "What?" So I look over at that and I find a course in contemporary marriage. Of course, this is 1983, 84 contemporary marriage, and I'm sure it would be very different now. But still, it was like that's the best I could come up with. Wasn't wanting to take a sewing course. There were some other, humanities that I probably could have taken. I didn't have the appreciation for that until much later when I started looking at geography. So I took the course and I don't know, I can't even remember if I got an A or not in it. Easiest course I ever took was astronomy. The way it was presented was so incredibly easy. I didn't have to do anything. I just barely showed up and got an A in that course, which is a shame because astronomy is fantastic. I think if I hadn't gone into meteorology, I would have liked to go into astrophysics. If we lived to be, like 200 years old and got to have a second career, it would be astrophysics. That's what it would be, because that is just so incredibly cool. So I was talking to the teaching assistant in my physics 2 lab. And so I said, okay, so I get this physics degree. What am I going to do with it? And he said something like, you will be able to get a job with somebody who will be able to know that you can understand what it is they're going to teach you about your job. And it won't be anything directly related to it. And I thought, well, that's pretty dumb. I want something that's related to whatever I'm wanting to do. And there was a guy that I knew who was in meteorology, living in the dorms where I was. And so we're eating one day, and I just go talk to him. I say, "Hey, tell me about meteorology." And he goes, "Okay." And he started telling me about it. And I thought, this is cool. Went and talked to my advisor. And she said, "Okay, that's no problem. Physics is a great platform for understanding things in general, and meteorology is very much an applied type of science, applied physics, applied math." And she goes, "You should be really good at that. So um, I want you to go talk to my friend over there." His name was Jeff Kemple. Went over there, go in and ask the secretary if I could talk to him. And lo and behold, turned out he was the director of the department, not just, a professor or something. And she goes, "Well, he's in right now and doesn't have anybody. Why don't you go talk to him?" I go, "Oh, really?" So I went in and we talked, and he goes, "Yeah, we would love to have people in physics come over here and get their graduate degrees in meteorology. No problem. Please do it." And that was cool. And the very first semester in graduate school, um, I actually got to be his teaching assistant, which was a lot of fun. He was very interesting. very interesting guy because not only did he understand the meteorology, but he was very politically sensitive and he knew how to play all those things. And eventually became president for 1 year of the American Meteorological Society. Their terms are 1 year. So, he understood all those things. He talked to me that day and I said, I'm coming over here. We're going to do that. And then I got into it. And once I got to graduate school, found my advisor. He was fresh out of college himself, technically. He had just finished his PhD at Illinois University. And so we did some computer modeling. Now, of course, I didn't realize I had ADHD yet, so it took me a long time to get through my master's degree. Somehow I did. I don't know how, to be honest. But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because if I had gotten done on time and quickly, I would have been gone by the time that my wife got there. So it's not some I wouldn't go back in time and tell myself I had ADHD or anything like that because it would totally screw up the rest of my life. That was something I needed to not know yet in order to be where I needed to be when I met her, which is actually going into a song that I'm currently trying to record.
It's kind of crazy with that too, is because if I if I had the insurance to pay for my ADD medicine back in middle school, I don't know if I would have ended up where I'm at now as a
Hmm.
musician, film student, and all that stuff. So I was an athlete at that time. I guess what I was getting to is that if it wasn't for me not having the medication at the time that I got it when I was like 26,
Right.
I don't know if I would have, ever met you if I would never been
Yeah.
able to write and be a film student and all this stuff.
I'm working on a song called Back in Time. The only part I have written the lyrics is the chorus so far. Actually, let me see if I can play it for you. Back in time, could I go back in time? Was it better yesterday or just a figment of my mind? Back in time to what I left behind. Was it better yesterday than today? And then it goes back into the verse.
It's good. It's a really great sentiment. Because if I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't fall so many times and got damaged and injured and
Exactly. The verses are going to, kind of talk about that. And then it hits this chorus, wondering if I can go back and change those things. And this is the part there's no music or anything for this next part, but this next part is the bridge. And there's a realization at that moment that, wait a minute, if I did go back, if I did change all those things, what would be different now that I wouldn't like? And, those things made me this person. And, maybe in some situations you'd think, yeah, I really wish that hadn't happened. And, you know, maybe finding out I was ADHD 10 years earlier, okay, yeah, that could help. But there's still a lot of things that I don't want to go back to myself as a kid
yeah,
and try and fix everything because first of all, I'd screw it up because I'm ADHD and, I
yeah.
wouldn't even tell myself the right things. So in the end, it just would not be, I think, a good thing.
Yeah, there's certain things that happened in my life. Yeah, like there's a lot of trauma that I experienced and stuff like that that it didn't make me who I am today, but it definitely influenced what I create through art. I forget what philosopher says this, is that in order to pick yourself up, you have to fall first. And to know how to pick yourself up every single time is the knowledge you gain every time you fall and you pick yourself up. And then It's the constant battle of humanity and what makes us human. And it took me a while to really actually accept that. And a lot of that came through musicians talking about those experiences of being in the lowest moments. You wouldn't know the high if you didn't know the low. You wouldn't know how to fly if you didn't sink. Like those type of poetic things that
Yeah.
really allows me to get closure and find acceptance of those moments that I was at my lowest point is that all of that created beautiful art in that way. Like the way the meaning for suffering was created and I won awards for and I mean that's why a lot of people know me on Threads and a lot is because I shared my grunge musical, the short film version of it, which was at one of my lowest moments where I was trying to kill myself. But if that moment didn't happen, then the art wouldn't have been created, and then it wouldn't have helped other people. And now it wouldn't have put me in front of all of these talented people. And like, if it wasn't for that moment, the forgotten could never, might not have ever been created.
Yeah. We have gotten to know a lot of very talented people on Threads. I mean, I am fascinated by all the people and getting to learn about people from all sorts of different parts of the world. I was experimenting with Threads last night, trying to just figure out what kinds of threads actually get more views. And I put something on, being up very, very late and knowing that I was up late because all the people from New Zealand and Australia were posting. And then I went to sleep. And then I woke up and there were all sorts of replies to this, which was great. I mean, I had a whole lot of fun with it, but
All of them are like really big parts of my story of my life. I would never have met them if it wasn't for me having the courage to finally release the grunge musical out into the world, which I would have never got through unless it was like Demo Nation when they had their first few episodes. I was just there at the right time of Threads.
oh, were in one of the demo nation.
Yeah, I had Meaning for Suffering. I was actually their second guest
Oh,
who
okay.
talked about Meaning for Suffering, which actually is what created being vulnerable because I was being vulnerable and I was like, this is actually something that is needed more in the world is to share vulnerable stories, um, discount all of this toxic masculinity where men can't cry and men can't express emotions and stuff like that. That is everything that I've been raised around is that, you had to hold back your tears and especially specifically as an athlete too. It's like if you're crying, you're a little girl, you're a little baby. They'd call me all of the bad names. And then,
I mean, come on. Have you ever watched the Super Bowl winner team? Those guys are
yeah,
over there crying like crazy, and the losers too, quite frankly.
it's more acceptable for a man to cry when they're happy rather than when they are sad.
Yeah, but yeah, the
Yeah,
losing team. I mean, come on. I
yeah.
remember watching. I think it might have been the last World Cup, and but I just remember there were some very sad men on that team. They were not holding back.
They're also not American.
Yes, there is that too.
Uh,
Um,
this American thing of like, I mean, I remember coaches like I'd like literally be hurt and I'd be like, rub dirt in it, get up, play in the next play. Like, and I would always feel like there was something wrong with me for crying when I was in pain. So I literally changed my whole personality like the next few years where I would laugh instead of cry. And I literally changed the way I physiologically reacted to pain. But it was because of toxic masculinity and
so seven
yeah.
years ago, I mean, 7 years ago, as of today, I had just gotten out of the hospital. I had C. diff, which, if anybody knows what that is, it's horrible. It messes with your body. It's like the worst dis intestinal disease you can possibly get. This virus, I think it's a virus or it's bacteria. It will live in your intestines, and if for some reason you lose the good bacteria, it will grow and flourish. And then if it gets really strong, it will try to kill you. I had already gone through one bout of it, gotten rid of it, but then it came back and put me in the hospital. I got out some days later, and I'm home. And, we're getting now into the holiday season. And so you start seeing these Christmas commercials, the heartstring Christmas commercials. And then you see all the news stories about some service person being home and surprising their children. And suddenly I am an emotional, it is just a flood of emotions. And I'm going, holy cow, this, uh, this disease has just totally wrecked everything inside of my brain. But even the slightest thing, there was no chance I would even turn on the Hallmark channel.
There was a part in my life where I found so much comfort in crying and being open with myself, watching like Friends and Scrubs and How I Met Your Mother. I'd sit there be crying at every episode and all that stuff, but that was after one of my concussions too, and like the
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I and also when I was so isolated from everybody, I literally was just in a room in dark depressed states for like a year. It was after I lost sports. Like when I lost the one thing that I traced for my entire life, I
Yeah.
went into a really bad depression. But I found comfort in crying at that stuff. But I would cry at just every episode of Friends or Scrubs or How Much Mother. I would like crying my eyes out. And it was definitely a change in the way I perceived my own emotions, where I was finally letting it out. Um, when previously all that stuff was held in, and I would like keep myself from like I for a while I was a little numb to my own emotions.
And see, that's really where I usually am, is it's not a lot of crying or anything. It's this deep, cold numbness that comes and just overwhelms everything to the point that it doesn't even feel like there is anything to get out anymore. It just and the worst of this was after my brother died. I went into a just a horrible depression at that point that took a long time to get out of. And I remember there were times my wife just, didn't know what to do for me. She wanted to help, but you know, how do you do that? I remember one time, it was as an adult that I really got into the Powerpuff Girls. I think if you watch that show as an adult for the first time versus watching it as a child, there's a whole other level of funny that's in there. And so I was loving this. And they came out with like a comic book of it, and my wife had bought me an issue of it. And so she just gave it to me to cheer me up, which actually did help. Things like that. But yeah, it's very often numbness, and it took a long time to find any medication that would help. It ended up being Wellbutrin, which was good because it's also one of those, you know, off script ADHD medications. So it helps with that some too. And I still take it to keep that away because the ADHD is also a huge instigator of depression.
Yeah.
And for so long, you know, I thought it was depression I had. It wasn't depression. I mean, it was, but it was ADHD that was causing it.
Yeah.
And so, learning about that was a huge help.
Yeah, I mean, just I have ADHD that makes me depressed, but it also gives me my anxiety disorder. And then I have all this PTSD from my past and stuff I experienced that my ADHD
Hmm.
just exasperates and puts me into weird mental states at times. Um, and the one thing that does help is escapism, and that's why like Friends and these TV shows helped, comic books helped.
Yeah,
Um, is because you're kind of escaping from your own stuff,
yeah,
and it's something that I remember trying to talk to this about or to it was like one of my best friends in film school, and he just had never experienced that, so he didn't understand that. But he allowed me to actually like kind of he tried to understand it, even though he couldn't personally understand it. But then he kind of knew a little bit about when I close myself off and I'm just like the world is too much. I just need to be in my little corner and watch my TV shows or read my comic books. And I just needed that little escape. And he understood that. So when and he could tell after I told him that there, he's never gonna take it personally when I'm not messaging him back or I'm not being, like how a friend should be is, answering the calls and all that stuff and being there. But that's something a lot of people don't understand, especially with ADHD people, and um, is how it can make us drop into depression or put us into anxiety and make us close ourselves off from the world, and all we want to do is just have an escape.
one thing a friend helped me with, because it was the thing of, always worrying about what other people are thinking about me, and are they
Yes.
are they thinking bad things about me and whatever. And so one day he looked at me and he just said, "Do you worry about what I think about you?" And I said, "Yeah, I worry about what you think about me." And he goes, "You really shouldn't worry because I hardly ever think about you."
Jeez.
I mean, he had a family, he had kids, he had a job, and he's not sitting around thinking bad things about me. And most people aren't thinking about you all the time. No one's thinking about you all the time.
And that's actually social anxiety.
Yeah, and so, if you
Yeah.
could get that into your head, at least you can fix maybe one problem.
I mean, it takes the experience. It takes a friend like that. It takes the understanding of when you are in those moments. But yeah, social anxiety, specifically through people who have ADHD, we obsess on every conversation and we replay it in our
Hmm.
brains. Do they like what I said? It will keep you up at nights. Because you're worried about one interaction that you had. I mean, sometimes this will happen to me when it's like a stranger on the street and I said something and then I'm like, why am I allowing this stranger to take? But I can't control that. The only thing I could do is to escape from these thoughts.
One thing that helps, and just not specifically that, but in general, is being able to write about it. For me, it's writing music about it. I've got a song about my ADHD. It's not about ADHD, it's about the feelings more surrounding it.
Is that Can You Hear Me Crying? Because
No, but you know what? That also, yeah, that one also fits. The one that I got pinned on Threads.
yeah, I remember just re-listening to it today because I heard it before and I was just like, now that I know that it was about ADHD, I'm like,
It was beyond that. It was beyond just that. It was that one fit more into the depression era. This one is a little bit more about the, here, let me play it for you if I can think about it. If I can get the chords. Okay, it's like lost in my mind, wondering if you will ever find me. Still, I want to run and hide so that you won't see the fear inside me. It's that dual thing, and I think I was actually talking about this to somebody recently, where you want to be seen, but you don't want anybody to see you.
Mm,
You know,
yes.
you want to be known, but you don't want them to see that stuff in you that they would make you known. I haven't released anything out there because of this very thing. I might be known.
Yeah.
You know, once I start doing this, they're going to see these things and maybe they won't like the music, or maybe they won't like me, or maybe they won't like what I'm saying. You know, I told you I was in a producer program with some different music producers, and one of them has been pushing me really hard to get this stuff together, and he's been helping me. And every time he just basically says, "What would it take for this to happen?" And, you know, that's the kind of question you can't just blow off. It requires an actual answer. And so,
Yeah.
you know, we started looking at it. And so like, all right, I need to pick a distributor. Okay, let's find out what it takes for you to pick the right one. And we went through some and we figured out one. And it's like, okay, what about BMI versus ASCAP? Okay, let's look at that. Okay, and then how do you want to release? Singles, or do you want to do, and we went through all these things, and the next thing is going to be a portfolio. And so I'm going to look at this, and I'm finally being pushed to get this stuff out there. So that means I also have to finish this music to a level that I like. And I'm not a perfectionist in the sense that it has to be, just right, but I do have to like it. And I guess if I can get it to where I like it, then I'll start putting it out and people will start seeing it. So, yeah, unlike a lot of your other guests who are on here, they're releasing a bunch of music, and I haven't released anything yet, except, for like that pin thread that I have there. And I didn't even produce that one. That was another guy who was in this same producer program. We were just kind of chatting online, and he likes producing stuff for fun. I said, here's a song. Here's a vocal, here's a piano. Do anything you want with it. I don't care, because even if it's not something I like in the style, I know you're so good that it's going to be good no matter what it is, and someone out there will like it. So I probably should talk with him about releasing that.
I can say I've had actually multiple guests, and they're all people who have ADHD that also have not released music, all dealing with some form of the imposter syndrome. That's the overplaying of that, of as people are gonna like it. Do I like it enough to release it? I mean, I deal with that. I mean, I didn't release Meaning for Suffering until I shared it with a few people that were like, you should release this. And then that's when I finally released my first stuff onto Spotify. It was the first time I released music out. And
Part of it is the artist I want to be. I have a lot of instrumental music. I could release a bunch of instrumental music right now, and those songs I would be fine with. But I don't think that's exactly what I want to be.
yeah,
I think I
yes.
want to, I want the lyrics to also be there. So those songs take a different level of mastery to get to. And there's still some things I am learning.
I mean, I have over like 90 songs that are beats I've made, scores I've made, a lot of stuff that I have not released at all because that's not the type of what I want to be. Is I want to be a singer-songwriter type person. So like those songs, I've gotten um Spectre Falling on one of the songs, Balls
Mhm.
was on one of the songs. Um those are like the only two people who's been on one of my 90 different freaking acoustic or not my instrumental
Mhm.
beats and all this stuff that I've made. I like making those songs, but
I do
it's
too.
not the artist that I want to be. So I do understand that.
I sort of wonder if I need to make two artist projects or even three.
Yeah.
I know that, for example, Jordan Coley has two different um, artist projects. one for his Christian music and one for all the other music. And so I've been thinking about that too. Maybe I want one for instrumental music.
Yeah.
Maybe I want one for music with lyrics, or got a bunch of old Christian songs that I could remake and put out there, and maybe a third. And I did find a distributor that, for the level that I wanted to do, I could use two artists. But then, okay, this is really a sticking point for me, and it seems like maybe it shouldn't be, but it is. I need a good artist name. I mean, come on, there are some really good ones out there. I'm seeing now, Mainframe, that has got to be one of the best artist names, the way he's done that. Seriously, that is great. And, Sprawler Foo, she's got a great artist name. And I'm like, come on, help me. I need a good artist name. I don't know what to do.
So where carpal tunnel comes from, I know I wasn't in your list, but it does come from two, like it means two different things. Um, I was told that I would never be able to learn guitar because of my carpal tunnel syndrome.
Mm,
And so then that's when I first was like, I'm gonna def and this was by a doctor. My doctor told me
hmm
I would not be able to ever learn guitar. So it was in spite of him that I was like, I'm going to learn it with carpal tunnel. I'm gonna be someone to so no one ever has to be told that
I th
again.
I thought it might be related to that. I wondered.
The other thing is the carpal tunnel is music made to save the world, like the carpal lane. Instead of it being a lane,
Oh,
it's because I make tonal music. A lot of my music are based off of triad chords. So I make
okay.
I make tonal music. So it's the mixture of that, but it meant something to me. So one thing to think about is I things that mean something to you and something that is specifically yours and that is part of your story and your journey. And think about names to have as that. And that's where carpal tunnel came from, is that.
On Instagram and on Threads, my uh, profile name is that Billy McPherson, which I thought, that's a possibility there in and of
Yeah.
itself. I haven't seen anybody else who's got that. Back in the day when I had my music partner, my old apartment mate from college, we went by Neon Salamander, which I still think is one of the all-time greatest names. It was we came up with this name in '85, and it was kind of, along the lines of band names like Pink Floyd or Strawberry Alarm Clock, or something like that. Neon Salamander. That sounds great. Man, I sort of think sometimes I should just talk to him and see about using that. I don't know.
I mean, it's also there are salamanders that glow in the dark. So it can actually even be tied to some truth.
I have searched for different names, and very often they just pop up already being used. So
Yeah. If you were a metal artist, you could do Billy Fierce or Fierce Billy.
yeah, I know somebody who used a sort of twisting of her name to come up with her artist name.
Well, everyone, thank you for joining this very special episode of Being Vulnerable. My special guest, Billy. I want to thank you for being here.
It has been fun.
And I will post all of his links below. But is there anything coming up next you want to get everyone excited for that you're releasing?
Just, keep watching this space, and at some point the music will start flowing.
Nice. Thank y'all for joining, and we'll see you next time of Being Vulnerable. And as always, give peace and love and understanding to others and yourself.